Hello, my name is Michael Glowacki. I'm a graphic designer, artist, and educator. First, before I get going into showing some of my artwork, I want to thank Studio 23 for including me in the exhibition and also what the organization does for the community. Everybody that works there offers a great service, and sharing artwork and having artwork be a part of the surrounding communities of Delta and also my surrounding community of Grand Rapids is a strong passion of mine. So thank you. Getting going, I thought I would dive into a brief timeline, and some of this I might skip through to make sure I stay on time. But I grew up in Bridgeport and Saginaw, and during my high school years, I grew a large passion for community service. And that eventually led to my interest in teaching. Right after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I could do with art, though I knew I loved to draw. So I went to Delta College for a year and really gained a lot of focus on what I could do career wise in the arts. So then I transferred to Kendall College of Art and Design, and I attained a BFA in graphic design, and I minored in photography. Graphic design attracted me at the time because it seemed like a medium that you could kind of go in all different directions. It wasn't necessarily limited to computers or digital. It included drawing, it included a lot of different options in the arts, and that's always been my interest of, kind of going between mediums and switching stuff up when I feel like it. From Kendall College of Art and Design, I went into Cranbrook, and I'll show some of the work I've done or did during my graduate studies. For anyone who's not aware of Cranbrook Academy of Art, it's kind of a hidden gem in the state of Michigan. It's the only graduate program for the arts that is solely a graduate program. There's no undergraduate program. And the campus is amazing. It's in West Bloomfield or near Detroit. And it's worth checking out the museum alone, let alone the entire campus. From Cranbrook, after my MFA, I moved to Chicago, and I was participating in exhibitions, fine art exhibitions. But I also needed a job, and I needed to pay the rent. So I started my career as a professional graphic designer, and was doing both those jobs at the same time, working full time as a graphic designer for a company called Organic, and I'll show some of that work. I also worked for some agencies called Royal Order of Experience Design. I freelanced, and as I said, I did many fine art exhibitions. From Chicago, I moved to Boston, and then I continued to freelance steadily. I got into teaching, and I realized I had a strong passion for teaching in Boston. So I was teaching part time, doing freelance work, and also pursuing fine art work within the city. Eventually, that led to a job offer back in my home state and hometown, Delta College, where I've been teaching since for close to 12 years now. And while teaching, I continue to freelance through my company, Exist Design Studio. It's just me, but I freelance regularly when I'm not teaching. And then I also still make fine artwork, and my fine artwork has changed over the years, slowly into prints, where I sell those prints regularly around the community in Grand Rapids, and also I exhibit that work in exhibitions like this in Bay City. I might have to skip through some of this stuff, but I thought I would show some inspiration, some artists that have inspired me and continue to inspire me uh, for my own career through my own artwork. Um, some you probably will know, Rene Magritte. I've always loved the surreal nature of his work. and also just that kind of play on reality. Marcel Duchamp uh, is a huge inspiration to me, and you could see probably some of his work in my graduate work, where it was really centered on concept and toying around with the ideas of questioning life in general and exploring those concepts through work. Keith Haring, I have a deep appreciation for just because of the positivity in his work. And also, he was a big believer in just sharing his work and getting it out to the public and not necessarily caring about, um, you know, if his work should only be in galleries and should only be, for a limited audience that can only afford expensive work. Actually, this image is an installation view of him at Cranbrook Academy of Art, Academy of Art, uh, years before I went there. Barbara Kruger, a mix of a graphic designer and fine artist who does amazing installations. Ed Ruscha, whom is I would have to, if you bent my arm and told me, and made me decide who's my favorite artist. I love Ed Ruscha. Uh, and apologies if I'm butchering names, but he did photography and these word paintings, and you know was an inspiration for some of the work I'll show. Matthew Cyber, a fairly unknown artist in Chicago. Henry Darger. There's a great documentary about Henry Darger, who is not necessarily an artist, but was a recluse. Trent Doyle Hancock, which I love for his abstract nature of his work, but also he tells stories and invents characters. And even though you don't even necessarily understand the story by the piece is his works are usually visually very interesting on their own. Jeff Koons, I like his visuals, but sometimes artists will tell you a little bit about yourself and as far as what you care about against them. Jeff Koons has or had a massive studio of artists where he didn't necessarily touch the work. He just came up with the ideas and produced the work. And there's multiple artists that do that. And I knew fairly early on I loved and still love making work, and I'm very kind of time craft oriented when it comes to my work. Wayne White came later after I was doing graduate work, but a lot of people began comparing a series of work that I was doing to Wayne White, and understandably so. But there's a great documentary about Wayne White, which I would highly recommend. His sense of humor about art, I just love. Same thing with Erwin Worm, uh, a crazy, fun artist who has a great sense of humor regarding his work. So I'll skip through some of these so I don't go so long. Gregory Crutzen. People I studied under in my graduate program, Beverly Fishman was a huge inspiration, still is. Elliot Earls, who teaches graphic design, still there, and really thinks outside the box as far as breaking the ground with, expanding beyond mediums. Uh, Randy Bolton, a great storyteller with his work. All right, finally, my work. So I started this series when I was at Kendall College of Art and Design. I was doing self portraits. I was minoring in photography, and was really interested in mixing graphic design and photography, and getting inspired by proverbs, stories, and making visual metaphors, and using an interest in symbols to try to communicate a story through a portrait. Inspired by Moby Dick, and I was always playing with the frame and thinking outside the box. Could I make the frame a part of the piece? And this was a secondary series, which I called word paintings, and most people call any type of text based work uh, word paintings, but these are found images that you would find in a flea market, and then I would paint text over the imagery, and it was very concept based. And while I was working on this type of labor intensive work, which was a mix of drawing digitally and then painting either over digital work or as a mix of painting and digital work or collage work and photography. It was very time consuming, and so I was started to work, or I wanted to invent a series of works that were a little bit quicker, just to get a break from those labor intensive works. And I still do that today within my own work. I have very long, labor intensive, kind of meditative work, and then, more quick, simpler work, just to break up the monotony of, the more labor intensive work. So I was always doing plays on concept, uh, and ownership of artwork, value of artwork. Here I was doing a play on Da Vinci, kind of referencing him through the Divi and the dualism of the viewer and the portrait of Mona Lisa. And also, I was interjecting a sense of humor, which I always appreciate and love. This was titled Z XYZ is the way it is. I would manipulate the image often, either digitally, and then collage it back in, paint over it, and make it look like it hadn't been touched. So I'll skip over some of these. Product for your own environment. And then I was also, during my graduate program, doing stuff like this just for fun, where this was a lounge, a basement lounge, kind of essentially a bar inside of the graduate program. And a lot of students have painted the walls inside of this room. And so I contributed this mural, this mural. And my thesis was very different. During my graduate program, I went in all different directions. And my thesis, I decided to go in a different direction because for the end of the year thesis show, it's in a large museum, and my work was usually fairly small, and I thought it would be overtaken by other works. And I just used it as an opportunity to explore. So this was hand built sculptural materials. Everything was hand built. Here's a close up view. And I was toying around still with symbols, graphic design, sculpture. And then really it was a homage to where I had come to be as an artist from childhood to now. A lot of the objects in here are pulled from my childhood. We always had this great big TV, and I have a lot of fond memories of being inspired by a lot of different television. Also, during that time, I was continuing to do graphic design work and putting on exhibition shows. So this was a show that I put on campus. I was also putting on exhibitions with other artists, friends in Saginaw or surrounding communities where they were from. And then I would do the graphic design work for the exhibitions. This was an exhibition all about seating. This was actually done for the Cranbrook Art Museum for a lecture series. And then once I left Cranbrook, like I said, I went to Chicago and Boston, and I continued doing work. So I was continuing this series of work. This was a larger piece that I was asked to do for an exhibition, a large exhibition in Chicago. This was a selected piece from a exhibition in Grand Rapids. Same thing with this. And so these are like, this image was a found image, but then I manipulated it digitally and then painted over it as well. And then I was also doing sculptural work where this was like a functional boombox, and I was just toying around with utilizing materials that were left around in my studio and just experimenting. At the same time, when I was in Chicago and Boston, like I said, I was working for a graphic design company, multiple graphic design companies. This was for my first job where the client was Jeep, Chrysler, and Dodge. So I worked with a team doing campaigns for this, and it was mainly all digital, interactive. This was a MySpace when MySpace was still around, MySpace page. And then we would do digital animations where I was creating content, working with people to animate, and working out the path for having it installed in a big venue like this. So on to teaching at Delta and graphic design and fine art. My site is www.existdesignstudio.com. And so this is my most recent work. And this is just a selection of works on my website. While I teach full time at Delta College and I am a program coordinator for the art and design program, like I said, continue to do graphic design work and fine art work. So these are some of the clients that I've worked for and produced work for, whether it be posters, logos, branding and identity for smaller businesses. Here's a mural I've done. I'll zoom in on that. So this was a mural that I was commissioned for a dog training facility where they use the word yes to train dogs. And so I made this digitally, projected it on their wall, and then painted it. And then I also did several poster designs for them as well. Logo designs, event advertising, design work. We also made fun bumper stickers for dogs that left the program. Here's some newer work at the bottom here and some of my artwork. So the moon and sun print is in this exhibition. I The way I created these is I started sketching. Generally, all my illustration work starts off as sketching, and then I bring it into the iPad and draw from there, and continue to refine the illustration, and then I get screens made and make them into screen prints. I appreciate screen printing over digital printing because you can print on metallic paper. You can use metallic inks. You can use a lot of different specialty inks that you can't necessarily do digitally. And also, it has a different texture. Screen prints just have a different feel and look to them. So these are on sale if you go to my site and shop. And let me show. I also have done different styles of prints. This is an homage poster to Grand Rapids, the city I live in, but I do work in Saginaw at Delta. I love both cities, but I have many friends and clients in Grand Rapids. Here's another print. So this was done over a summer, and then I continued to refine it, but it's all hand drawn on the iPad. What I like about the iPad is just it's a break from the computer. And so again, referencing back to finding ways to keep doing work regularly, I find that I get burnt out on being on the computer. And so being on an iPad or being able to draw in a more traditional fashion is just a nice break for me. And then I started drawing this. I had this image in my head for the longest time, and I finally got to it, and that's kind of how I mentally work. I have a backlog of pieces I want to make, and then I'm slowly working through them. But I started making this during COVID, and it just seemed like the right moment to make this work and keep it in black and white because so much was going on. And I find this work very meditative to make, and because it's so labor intensive. And this most recent work, this most recent series, I guess, or prints, is all centered around positive outlooks, meditation, kind of very broad themes. And generally, with my work, I like it to be positive, whether it be, uh, you know, my design work is obviously for a specific client, and I also like that break too between design work and fine art work, where I'm given criteria and I'm given a deadline. Where my fine artwork is almost completely the opposite. I don't have a deadline. It's up to me when it is done, uh, and so to go back and forth between that works really well for me. And I have always admired artists for not having those deadlines. I definitely appreciate deadlines and criteria and whatnot. Sometimes that's definitely a thing I struggle with as a fine artist. So, again, my company name is Exist Design Studio. I've chosen that name because it's a way for me to share my work and have it exist out into the world. But please follow me on Instagram, Facebook. If you're interested in prints, go to my shop. I'm going to be adding more prints to it in the future, and one is almost done. I hope you enjoy this talk, and feel free to message me if you have any specific questions. Thank you again for the opportunity, and thank you for listening to my short lecture.